Hello everybody and welcome to Your Planet Today. I'm Brian Christie. There is alarming new evidence that the Earth's climate is in fact heating up. Satellite images show that Arctic sea ice is now at a new record low. Environment News Service reporter Sonny Lewis has the latest.
The mass of ice covering the Arctic Ocean is smaller this year than scientists have ever measured, 1/3 smaller now than it was 30 years ago when satellite observations began. New American and European satellite data show that this year Arctic sea ice is melting faster than it did in the previous record low year, 2005. An area of sea ice the size of Europe melts away every summer, leaving a minimum ice mass in September. These NASA satellite images from 2005 show how far the ice retreated. This year, it retreated even more. Arctic sea ice reflects sunlight, keeping the polar region cool and moderating the global climate. Mark Serez is a scientist with the National Snow and Ice Data Center in Boulder, Colorado.
What's happening here is that as you lose that summer Arctic sea ice cover, start to lengthen the duration of that melt season, get more melt, more open water. Well, now we're left an ocean with a lot of open water. Okay? And so now what's going to happen is the sun starts to set, of course, and so the ocean wants to pump that heat right back up into the atmosphere, warming the lower atmosphere.
Arctic summers could be ice-free within 5 years and clear of ice year-round by 2040, according to the latest research from the Naval Postgraduate School in Monterey, California. This is the second year in a row that the most direct trans-Arctic sea route through the Northwest Passage has opened up. The United States, Canada, and Russia are all now claiming rights to this passage. When Arctic sea ice melts quickly, the air temperature over nearby frozen land warms up too. Warming temperatures can penetrate as far as 900 miles inland, especially in autumn, computer studies from the National Snow and Ice Data Center show. Arctic soils hold at least 30% of all the carbon stored in soil worldwide, and thawing permafrost releases carbon dioxide and methane, greenhouse gases that could further accelerate global warming.
Who has the rights to drill for valuable oil and gas reserves in the Arctic area? U.S. and Canadian scientists are working on a new project to decide those rights. The goal is to map the unexplored and precious Arctic seafloor. The partnership will focus on the mining of seabeds in the area. Research vessels will scout the outer limits of the continental shelf. Both countries have pledged to share the data. In other environmental news across the U.S. today, greening the White House has become a major focus of the election campaign. Experts say energy policy is a crucial component of the race. The League of Conservation Voters has been following Congress and how they vote on the environment. They say Republican John McCain has rejected some renewable energy programs. They add McCain voted against raising fuel efficiency standards, and he supports tax breaks for oil companies. McCain now says he does support offshore drilling. Meanwhile, the League has endorsed Democrat Barack Obama. Mr. Obama has pledged to get 25% of America's electricity from clean energy by 2025. He's also against offshore drilling. Meanwhile, the famous Yazoo Pumps project has been killed. It was supposed to be the largest hydraulic pumping plant in the world. The controversial $220 million proposal was shelved by the Environmental Protection Agency. Since 1941, the Army Corps of Engineers has been planning to drain Mississippi Delta wetlands for flood control. The EPA says the veto will protect 67,000 acres of wetlands. Conservationists say the decision will benefit both taxpayers and the environment. They say that Mother Nature's natural wetlands will control floods better than a pumping plant. Two government agencies are at odds over the safety of bisphenol A. The chemical is used to harden plastic products, including baby bottles and drinking water bottles. National toxicology officials say the substance may alter brain development and behavior. The plastic also increases the risk of prostate cancer in children, infants, and fetuses. However, the FDA says they have found that bisphenol A is safe at current levels of exposure. Have you ever wondered where your computer goes when you throw it away? Experts say it's becoming a fast-growing type of modern pollution. They call it electronic waste. Environment News Service reporter Jim Crabtree has the latest.
A Greenpeace investigation has discovered that high-tech toxic trash exported from Europe and the United States is causing widespread pollution throughout the country of Ghana. An analysis of samples taken from 2 electronic scrapyards in Ghana revealed severe hazardous chemical contamination.
We do not have the facilities to recycle them. They are killing our people because they contain very heavy toxic metals that are not desirable for our health and also the environment. They are fouling the environment for generations and generations to come. There is no way that we can deal with these problems.
Previous Greenpeace investigations have exposed pollution from e-waste scrapyards in China, India, and Nigeria. The investigation in Ghana has uncovered evidence that electronic waste is being exported, often illegally, to Ghana from Europe and the United States. In the yards, unprotected workers, many of them children, dismantle computers and TVs with little more than stones in search of metals that can be sold. The remaining plastic cables and casing is either burned or simply dumped. Samples taken from the workplaces contain toxic metal levels as much as 100 times above background levels. Containers filled with old broken computers, monitors, and TVs arrive in Ghana from Europe and the United States under the false label of second-hand goods. The contents of the containers end up in Ghana's scrapyards. Greenpeace uncovered e-waste that had been shipped from Philips, Panasonic, Sharp, and the majority of all other major brands. Parts were also found on the site that were marked as property of the EPA. Greenpeace and other environmental groups are pressuring the biggest electronic companies to phase out toxic chemicals and introduce global recycling schemes. Some companies are making progress towards taking responsibility for the entire life cycle of their products. However, many companies refuse to accept responsibility for recycling their old products. This is Jim Crabtree reporting for the Environment News Service.
Let's take a quick trip around the planet today. In South and East Asia, heavy rains, flash floods, storms, and landslides are wreaking havoc during this monsoon season. Officials say more than 3 million people in the Bihar state of India have been displaced. More than 250,000 homes in India, Nepal, Pakistan, and Bangladesh have been destroyed. Officials say aid from around the world is arriving daily. In Iraq, the United Nations is making plans to list the Fertile Crescent as a World Heritage Site. The area is believed to be the location of the biblical Garden of Eden. These marshlands were 90% destroyed by the Saddam Hussein regime. UN and Iraqi officials have restored 60% of the wetlands and introduced solar power to serve residents. The Iraqi government says they are working toward making the marshlands a national park. Meanwhile, Canadian officials are protecting more than 1,700 square miles of Arctic wilderness. They have established 3 new national wildlife areas on northeastern Baffin Island. The location contains critical breeding and feeding grounds for millions of migratory birds. It's also a habitat for bowhead whales and polar bears. In China, scientists are breeding a genetically altered cow. They say the animal is capable of producing cancer-fighting proteins for humans. The cow born in Beijing can produce antibodies in its milk. A dozen more cows are expected to be born this month. Researchers say intensive breeding of the animals would enable China to mass-produce the cancer-fighting proteins. The artwork of popular American environmentalist Robert Weiland is legendary. 30 years ago, Weiland decided to paint 100 murals of whales on buildings around the world. But back then he didn't know that his 100th mural would be painted in China. Environment News Service reporter Jim Crabtree has more.
A dedication ceremony was held today in Beijing to unveil the first 2 murals created by Robert Weiland, the environmental artist, together with children from around the world. The Chinese portion of the project, being displayed throughout Beijing, is titled The Great Green Wall of China. Weiland and the young artists have worked together to paint the world's aquatic habitats and their inhabitants, as well as wildlife found in their home countries. The long mural represents the connectedness of the planet's water and the impact that people have on our waterways and the diversity of life they contain. Weiland is the Guinness Book of World Records holder for having painted the largest mural in the world. At nearly 2 miles in length, the Beijing mural will be 8 times longer than the current. Weiland's whale murals can be seen in more than 70 cities throughout the United States, Europe, Australia, New Zealand, Mexico, and Japan.
And that's what's happening on your planet today. For the Environment News Service, I'm Brian Christie. Thanks for joining us.